United States of America. Unity and oneness is what we're made of. One nation under God, it's plain to see. We're showing the whole world what a country should be. United we stand in America, hand in hand in America. Together as one in a land that we love. United we stand in America.
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. It is a beautiful Wednesday, March the 12th. It is going to be around 80 degrees here in Springfield, Missouri. We are live at the Acts Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri, and we have a great show today. I am Lynn Morris, and my co-host is
Dr. Mary Byrne.
You are Dr. Mary Byrne, and we've got two great friends and guests today, and we just were talking. This is your fifth time to be on our show. We've been on air now almost 5 years. I've actually lost count of the number, so I've got to get together. And I've been trying to go back on the calendar and go back in old copies and things like that. And I still have not got quite the number. And so Jim Whining, our CEO of Acts Ministry, he is going to help me figure out when did we exactly start. So I think that'll be interesting. And we have Dennis here. He's our producer, and we're all volunteers working for the Lord today. So we have got Jerry and Kate Angelo, and you guys are with Vanguard Marriage and Family Advocates.
That's correct. That's a mouthful there.
Yeah, but you specialize in marriage. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started. I know that Kate's got a couple of books. You've written books too, Jerry, but you got to get busy. She's ahead of you.
She's way ahead, yes.
On writing books. But no, it's really cool. I think that, when you have important things to say and you want to educate and help other people, then that's what you should do, is write a book. And hopefully that will inspire and help other people. And stuff like that. But Jerry, we were talking before the show started, you guys basically have, with what you do about marriage, and you guys travel all over the country. I know you've been to Dallas, you've been to D.C., I mean, that's all over the area and probably other places I don't even know about. but you got like four tenets or four areas of your ministry. Let's kind of start out there, but we're going to talk about our marriage resolution that we just did in Christian County, the state of Missouri, other states that you've been involved in, and just all kinds of things today. But we'll kind of let you get started.
Sure. So our ministry is, as you mentioned, Vanguard Marriage and Family Advocates, and it's the driving force behind our marriageminute.org website and also our prayer initiative website. And kind of the four pillars that platform stands on are prayer, marriage, leadership, and events. And so those are our four areas of focus. And, we've been on here talking before about the various prayer events that we have throughout the year. Every year we are part of the National Day of Prayer. In fact, I'm the coordinator for the state capitol, where we typically have the governor and his cabinet and the assembly members will come to that. And
so in Missouri.
In Missouri and Jefferson
we
City.
got people in all 50 states watching our show today.
Yeah.
And so hopefully other states are doing the same thing.
Yeah, they should have their own National Day of Prayer coordinators in various locations. And I know that you are speaking at the one in Branson that's coming up.
In Christian County, in Ozark, and I'm looking forward to
Ozark,
it.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm doing the government prayer.
Okay.
And government needs prayer.
Yeah. And we do a similar kind of thing up in Jefferson City for that location where we're praying over, government officials, marriage and family, and a few other things that are of important need. And so, and this year's kind of unique, actually. We are going to be teaming up with the Midwest March for Life folks, Kathy Forks, kind of leading the charge on that. And so we're both descending upon the Capitol there in Jefferson City, Missouri. And so we're going to have all these prayer warriors and faith leaders are going to be there. And in the past, they've had thousands of people show up. And so we're pretty excited to be able to partner up with them. I think their event starts about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then ours will start about 1 p.m.
So what's the date?
The first Thursday in May, which is
First
March
Thursday, May.
1st, or
Okay.
May
Yeah.
1st.
Okay, yeah.
May 1st.
And you're right, there's gonna be thousands of people in Jefferson City, Missouri, and that will be awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, not to diminish the other National Day of Prayer groups that are happening all across the state. Of course, we'd love for you to come and visit what we're doing there. But if you can't make it up to the Capitol, then I'm sure whether you're in Missouri or not, there's some local National Day of Prayer group that's happening to honor the Lord in prayer on that day. And then we also do an annual Missouri Prayer Fest, which is also at the Capitol. And we focus on 10 areas of prayer. And again, I'm typically inviting the leaders across our state, whether they're elected officials or maybe they're pastors of a church where they're leading the way in faith, family, and freedom efforts. And so we're doing that. And that's typically the first Saturday in October. This year, I believe it's October 4th, and it's on a Saturday as well. And so that's part of how we fulfill that call of prayer in our ministry. Of course, we are also focusing and teaching couples and families on how they can pray. And I like to throw this statistic out a lot that if one of the ways that you can divorce-proof your marriage is focusing on prayer, because typical divorce rates, arguably 1/3 to 1/2 of marriages fail. And subsequent marriages are twice as likely to fail with those statistics. I mean, nobody can really pinpoint an exact number, but it's too high. It's too high. It's too high, and that's whether it's a secular marriage or it's a Christian marriage or whatever. But the folks that are devoting an intentional time of prayer in that marriage, those divorce statistics go all the way down to 1 in 1,156. So it's a pretty significant drop, and I think that's kind of an indicator of the character of your marriage, where you are intentionally making time to pray. And so that's something that you should consider. If you're not doing that, I would definitely encourage you to start doing that. It's important.
You know, Jerry and Kate and Mary, prayer is extremely important. And what I've found at my old age is a lot of people still don't know how to pray. They're afraid to pray. Some people understand the importance of it, but they're afraid to pray. And I've started my little ministry because I lost my foot and leg, so I'm helping other people just like me. And I've actually been leading some people to the Lord as I help them remodify their life to start all over again. But I've been teaching people how to pray, because if you didn't grow up in a family home where the parents taught you how to pray around maybe the kitchen table before you eat, or just pray before you go to bed, just talk. Just talking. It's just talking to God. God understands no matter how good you are. Mary, she'd be great in prayer. she can speak and talk and everything, and God's certainly going to understand her. But some people, they won't be very good, but it doesn't matter.
No,
Because God hears you.
and He's given you a book in the Bible. The whole book of Psalms
Yeah.
is a book of prayer.
Right.
So if you don't know what to say, just start reading and say it out loud.
Yeah.
That's a good guide.
And prayer in marriage, it's difficult because it's one of the most intimate things that you can do outside of being intimate together, that you would let your spouse hear what you're trying to tell the Lord. And so we actually teach people how to pray using the Lord's Prayer, really, and to use some of the formulas that are in Psalms and things like that. And when your spouse gets to hear your heart to the Lord, then it really just opens up a whole nother world of communication between the two of you.
And he says, my word won't come back to me void.
Right.
So if you read his words to him out loud, you're speaking to yourself, you're speaking to him. And he's like, yes, I'll do that. That's what I said in the first place. It's,
Yes.
But what I reflecting on with some of my friends who are having difficulties in their marriages is probably unrealistic expectations that when you come into a marriage, you come in with the Hallmark version of weddings.
Right?
Is that right?
Yeah.
And when you, after time, my mother-in-law said, when I called her within the first couple of months saying, could you explain to me about your son? Because I'm not getting this. And she said, well, the first year is where you shake down the house and find where the plumbing's bad.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's a Southern lady.
Yeah.
And what she was doing is saying, reset your expectations here because you
Yeah.
married a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
and-
say that the number one reason for divorce is actually selfishness. It's not communication. I mean, it is communication, but it's because like Mary and I can talk like women, we can talk about start here and circle all the way back around. But men like to go, subject to subject to subject. And so when you get upset that your spouse isn't communicating with you in that way, then you're really just saying, I want you to be more like me, which is not what God created. So
No. And when you know from very early on, like I was a teacher in school, women were girls at one time, and their language development is much earlier, much more fully developed. Guys kind of kick in about age 7. Girls have been rambling since age 3. and it's, I mean, I admire men who are excellent writers and good poets and great communicators, but they're not the norm. And there's, when I went into, I used to teach undergrad, and I went into the classroom early just to kind of set up, and some undergrad students were already there and talking about their boyfriends and kind of trashing on them. And I said, so you want someone who's going to anticipate your needs? They go, yeah. And I said, well, then don't give up your girlfriends.
right? Yeah, that's right.
To expect a guy to be your girlfriend
Yeah.
is inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right.
You really need to, we talk a lot about unmet expectations, but because women can kind of sense and meet an expectation that's not really spoken, like you just mentioned. And our girlfriends are great at that. And, but whenever it comes to the husband, there's the reason why I love Mark Gunger's way of doing that. He talks about how they have goggles and they only see goggles. And so you have to put something right in front of them and say,
In their line of
me-"
vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bring me
Lynn,
flowers.
you need to get in here, buddy.
Once a week. Yeah.
These girls are taking
They're
over.
really going good right now.
Sorry.
Well, we get it.
But that's okay. So how many years have you guys been married?
We're on 18 years right now.
18
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And then how many years?
I was married 35 years.
35
Wow.
years, and I'm going on 44 this
See,
year.
we don't even know anything. We don't even know anything.
Well, see, and it was till death do us part, right? We meant it when we said it.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And but there are people out there, guys, that either never have married, and for those people, some of those people, that's okay. I mean, we're not. I was just thinking about that today as I was driving over here. Some people just want to live alone, but there's other people that don't. And if you really are looking for a partner, I tell one of our daughters who's not married at this point and has been married, the best way to find him is not in bars and places that some of the young people go. It's churches and places where you work. You try to find like-minded people.
And character is important.
Yeah, and character is important.
And that's where you want to go.
So this show is for marriage and about marriage, but there's a lot of people out there that maybe want to get remarried again too. They for some reason either their spouse died or maybe it just didn't work out. But marriage is extremely important. It's the oldest institution. God created it.
That's right.
And it's so important. And there's so many people that downplay it. Even government. A lot of people I know in government, at one time, if you really wanted to get on Medicaid, you needed to divorce each other
Yeah.
and be single. Oh my gosh, there's all kinds of things. Now you're dividing the father from the mother and the
Yeah,
kids
that's
and
right.
everything. And so we have a lot of, and the devil's always trying to figure out how to divide people up and stuff like that.
But that's a Marxist idea.
Yeah.
That's written in the Communist Manifesto, is abolish the family.
Yep.
And that was the first thing God did, was
Yeah.
a marriage ceremony,
Yeah,
right?
that
Yeah.
was before church,
Yep.
before government. He created the institution of marriage.
That's right.
And, between one man and one woman, that's what he created.
Well, that is the basic unit of government,
Right.
is the family, the household.
Yeah.
And his first miracle was at a wedding. And the end of the book is a wedding.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're speaking my language. And
Yeah.
so it starts out in Genesis with a marriage before church and government.
Right.
It ends with the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Right.
And then every book in the Bible is a love story of Christ reconciling his bride to himself. So we better pay attention to marriage and relationship. I think that's the whole game, is a relationship. How, obviously our relationship with the Lord comes first, right? That's kind of our genesis of relationship is with God, and then our relationship with our spouse and our family and our ministry, and so there's relationship is important in all aspects of that spectrum there, and
And
so
all the statistics support that too, right? The statistics of how well children do in school and
oh yeah, having that intact family, the relationship of the home. We could go on and on with those kinds of statistics, but they're important. God's plan works, but we got to work God's plan, but it does begin, I believe, really with our relationship with the Lord. When we come to know Him as our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we become aware of God at that moment through a relationship of prayer, and so we're aware of God. But then we realize and become self-aware of the identity that He has given us. It's an indelible identity that doesn't change, and it regardless of a spouse, a child, a job, our sexual identity, because all of those things, can change in our society. And if that's where your identity comes from, then you're going to be in a crisis. But when we recognize the true identity that the Lord imparts within us, that permanently, we can rest assured that we know who we are, we know whose we are. So many people are like, "Who am I? Why am I here?" But if you have a relationship with the Lord and you know what your identity is, then the Lord can cast a vision for you and create a purpose for you to walk in for your life. And I call it being a VIP. There's identity, there's vision, identity, and purpose in our relationship with the Lord. And then when you get married, I believe that the Lord creates an identity for your marriage.
Yeah.
And that identity is what is that salt and the light to the community, and that's what we're focusing on in our ministry, that the Lord has created an indelible identity in our marriage, and we're using that for God's glory and showing others things that maybe we weren't shown when we were growing up. And so we're focusing on that, we're learning about that, and we want to teach others God's plan for a marriage. And so with that identity, He's cast a vision, we're walking in that purpose. And so, there are struggles that we have in our own marriage and our family and in our ministry. And so when things get difficult, when you're standing on a rock solid foundation of the Lord Jesus Christ, and it's within purpose, then when things are difficult, this is why I'm doing this, and I can continue because I know the Lord's going to provide. And so its purpose is really important.
Yes, I've always viewed part of our purpose in getting married as first recognizing everybody's broken. Mm-hmm. And part of God's plan for bringing you together is to be the instrument of healing for the other person. Mm-hmm. Not that you can heal them, they have to also receive it. The power has to come from God. But that fidelity, trust, what you're talking about in terms of security, that is the foundation of everything in the family. And if your spouse can't feel secure that you're you're in on this 100%, and that it's about recognizing God at the center, then the marriage isn't fulfilling its purpose, and the children brought into that marriage don't have the foundation for building their identity. It's like the bottom platform, and if it's removed, everything else gets wonky.
You know, God's word says that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken.
Exactly.
And it's referring to God being at the center of that relationship. And, you know, you could probably have a good marriage for a while without the Lord, but when life throws some of those things at you that it inevitably does, you don't have that purpose or that foundation that can withstand. And that's where I think a lot of marriages fail, is they think they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of a bit of pride, a bit of selfishness, but when we rely on the Lord, that really is the key. And again, that's tied directly to prayer. And one thing that I didn't get a chance to mention yet is on our website, marriageminute.org, we have some tools there that can help guide you in a 6-minute prayer. And we just hit the basics. We're talking about 3 1-minute segments for the husband and for the wife, and it's basically thanking God, asking His forgiveness, and then blessing our spouse. And like Kate was mentioning, there are ways to be intimate in a marriage, but that's one of the most intimate ways you can be in a marriage is not praying to your spouse or to any other person, praying to the Lord, and then having your spouse be able to be a part of that transaction of your prayers to the Lord. And it's an amazing thing, and I would really encourage folks that are listening and watching to check that out, that 6-minute prayer that we have on our website, and start doing that in your relationship and just see what God does with that.
Right, and for people who struggle with having words come into their head, it's nice to start with a script.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you grow from there.
Right.
It doesn't stay that way, but it's a wonderful support and aid.
You know, when I was growing up, my family didn't pray out loud. We prayed, but we prayed quietly to ourselves, and it was frightening to do that out loud.
Yeah.
And now we're thrust into this ministry, and I've come a long way, baby. And so now I'm asked to speak out loud and to pray, and so you can do it.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of courage, but the Lord will be right there with you. And if you have your spouse too, it seems so easy to do, and the process is simple, but it's not. You're having to be vulnerable.
But Jerry, you could pray like God hears Mary, and she's going to be perfect when she speaks, and then God hears me, and I'm not going to be near as perfect as Mary. But one of the things that I really think that we just got through talking about, I like when you said struggles, because everybody's going to have struggles.
That's right. Yeah.
There is nobody exempt from struggles, and I think the interesting thing is when Jim Winey and I started this show, and we talked about what we wanted to focus on, and we wanted to be different. We're talking about solutions today. We're talking about positive things. There is issues, that. We just talking about issues and struggles and divorce and different things. But there's also positive things, and we know that in today's world, when you watch TV, it's almost always negative on the news. There's no positive solutions. You read the print, and it's almost always negative. No matter what print you look at, it's always usually negative, no solutions. Radio, same way, pretty much negative. Everybody's complaining, no solutions. And on this show, we're offering solutions today, and part of that is staying married, being married, staying married, and knowing the Lord. And, I would just tell people right now, if you don't know the Lord, you need to know the Lord. You need to have a relationship with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and it's easy to do. Somebody like me can lead a person that just lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. I led him to the Lord. And it is kind of nerve-wracking to begin with.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself when I started doing this, what if I fail? But God's not going to let you fail.
He put you there to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's given you the tools to do that. So we talked about, that selfishness is the number one reason for divorce. But what is the antithesis to that? Like, what do? You serve. So here you are serving other people by helping them to get over this really difficult time in their life. And in marriage, we have to serve our spouse. We need to be there when they're going through that. We need to be there whenever they're struggling. And if you can't serve somebody else wholly and without expecting something in return, then you probably should not get married. And you definitely should not have children because they want you to serve them forever. So you definitely don't want to do that. But
And we'll never come to a place of
Right.
perfection.
No.
I
No.
tell our kids, there's no perfect spouse, but there might be a perfect one for you.
Well, there's only one perfect person.
Right.
And that person hadn't
right.
come back yet.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
the rest of us, we'll never be perfect.
But we need to be striving for that perfection.
Sure,
Right? We need
sure.
to be working towards that. I mean, we won't be perfect until we come into glory with Christ.
God doesn't want us to be mediocre.
Right.
God
Right, but-
wants us to be successful. He wants us to be happy. He wants us
Yeah.
to be good.
And
That
Je-
perfection, though, isn't our idea of how we think we would be perfect. If we keep asking Jesus to make us more like him, that's the perfection.
Correct.
And Jesus said, I did not come to be served, I came to serve. And so again, if you stay in the Word and you're continually using that as the Bible as your refuge,
Your compass.
and
Yeah.
your compass, so that whenever you have struggles and trials, that you can get into that Word and let the Lord. We see a lot of people that make what is that quote that you use? Like, don't make a permanent decision on an emotional. Sorry.
Don't make life decisions on emotional situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the moment, your emotions are raging and they're just warring within you, and you can't believe that your spouse just, spent your last dollar on a video game when you needed to go buy formula for your baby, and they make an emotional decision. And instead, you have to slow that down a little bit, because those are real problems that people have. They have problems where their spouse is drinking. They have problems where, the finances are trouble, and someone can't keep a job, and those are real day-to-day struggles. But they're not eternal struggles. Those are the life's struggles, and your eternal struggles. How your children will come to know the Lord, and what they will see as an example is far more important than that moment.
Have you ever seen a couple that look very similar? It's almost like brother and sister, right?
Yeah.
And the longer they're married, the more they look alike. Well, we kind of joke about that. It's kind of funny, but the more that we fall in love with the Lord, we begin to have the same desires, right? He gives us the desires of our heart. And I think the closer we get to the Lord, he's going to do that. That's what his word says. And we will become more like him the more that we pursue him. And that's going to have a dramatic effect on our marriage and that relationship and all the other relationships that we have. And I just want to encourage those that may be struggling is just, seek the Lord and his desires for you, because they will eventually become the desires of your heart. And again, that's just why prayer is just so important. And another thing that that's on our list or our pillar of our ministry is marriage and leadership. And one of the things that we are doing right now, we're part of a community marriage initiative. It's a statewide initiative. It's actually a national community marriage initiative where we're working with several other partners across the country. And we're collaborating and sharing information and working together on multiple projects that we're implementing, individually across the nation. And one of the curriculum that we're using is Adventures in Marriage. And within Adventures in Marriage, we are teaching basically 4 skills. And they start basic, and they get a little bit more advanced as you progress. But they are created to help in the communication process of couples. And sometimes when, we're off into the ditch in the weeds in our marriage, in our relationship, it's because the other person is speaking, or one person is speaking and the other person is already prepared a response, so they're not really listening. And I think that's a very common thing that happens, and that's something that we have to guard against in our relationship. Have you ever had that, or maybe you've been in a board meeting or whatever, and you're just like, you're ready for your response, but you're not really listening to what they're saying. And so these skills that are taught in the Adventures in Marriage program, we kind of slow time down. And I like to say it's almost like we're on this highway that's under construction. I don't know if you've been on I-44, where they force you onto one lane with the high guardrails, the concrete barriers. You can't stop and turn around. You got,
You're captured.
Yep.
You're in there,
Captured.
and you're going through to the other side, to help you God, right? And it's kind of like that, the first skill, because they want you to get to learn how to, when one person is speaking, that you are receiving that message. And it's just amazing to me, to see couples go through that first skill, because you got the speaker, and then the person they're basically forced to speak, the other one's forced to listen, and they don't get to react or respond to what they're saying other than acknowledgement. And once they kind of go through that exercise, and it's not as awkward, just to see them, like, you can tell their hearts are open now, and they're just like, wow, I haven't felt heard in years like this before.
Yeah, I've seen an exercise with a talking stick.
Yeah.
That only the one holding the stick can talk.
It's very similar
Like
to that.
yeah.
And then, those skills they kind of build upon as they, kind of are working on that. And once they get it, then we can build upon some other facets to
So you
that.
can talk about surface level issues first, and then kind of dig a little deeper, and each tool for a different situation. But we were talking about earlier with the prayer, starting with the script. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Start with the script,
Right.
so that, and you're retraining your brain to have a different response,
Right.
to listen before you speak.
And it's,
Because it's actually impulse management.
Yes. Yes.
And impulsiveness is a developmental issue.
Yes.
and we're working on
Right.
empathy, right?
Yes.
Instead of reacting, we want to respond. We want to respond to their stimulus, right? Instead of reacting. That goes against what they're trying to do, and so those are some of the tools and the programs that we want to get into the hands of pastors, or in the churches or businesses. There are men and women who are entrepreneurs that have been through the ringer in marriage, and they have a heart to serve. They just don't know how. Well, we would love to come in and do an event where we're teaching these skills. And in this particular program, they're reporting like 86% of success, weeks, months, and years afterwards. They're saying that the satisfaction in our marriage has gone up as a result of going through this skill. Like, it's a life-changing,
That's an awesome
long-lasting
number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's twice
86%.
and it's twice as effective as the nearest program that is successful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And let me tell you a quick thing, since you're county commissioner, that, we have some friends who use this exact program in Jacksonville, Florida, and I know Jerry has the numbers a little better than I do, but they spent about $1 for every person who lived in this county. And what they did was apply marriage materials as much as they could, and coach the people, afterward if they needed to. So about 12 hours of training, maybe 15 total or something like that.
Wait, this is a government-sponsored program.
No, it's the private funded, but
It began as a private,
but they applied it to a city.
Okay.
And so they figured out that the burden on the taxpayer was about $38,000, maybe $40,000 for every divorce. So that's the burden on the taxpayer that they are paying for court costs, for loss of wages, for loss of businesses.
This is a national cost to every
Yeah.
taxpayer. That's the average.
I never thought of it that
It's like
way.
$118 billion in divorces every single year, some astronomical amount like that. So they They spent $3 million over 3 years. And by the end of that, they were able to reduce the divorce rate by 28%. And then they extrapolated those numbers. And then they were able to have a return on that investment for that particular Jacksonville, Florida, of $28.8 million.
So if you're spending
Wow.
$38,000 a divorce, that's a cost that they're already incurring, but now they're investing about $1 a person in that community, and they are saving those divorce dollars now,
Yeah.
like from there on out. And so it's a significant reduction in costs for the
Yes.
taxpayer.
Were you a participant in the hearings about lowering the marriage license age?
I don't think we participated in the hearings for that, but
I've been watching that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the committee did not pass that.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting because it gets on to our discussion about security and how the cycle of divorce kind of perpetuates itself intergenerationally because one of the strong testimonies against lowering the marriage age, or marriage license age, was that she used marriage as an escape from a bad family situation.
Right.
And we were out of town, otherwise I probably would have been present to sit in on that.
Yeah.
And I kind of have some mixed feelings about that. And I know that bills like that are probably well-intentioned. I think there are some other ways to achieve the success that they're looking for. What if we were educating those young folks, on how to have good, strong relationships?
Like even in school.
Well, and discernment about what you're doing, what's your real motivation for
Yeah.
doing this, because
Yeah.
escapism is not a healthy reason.
Right.
Yeah. I would say for every one person that we know who is like a teenage marriage that has spanned the test of time, for every one of those, we probably see maybe 10 or more that are, or more than that, that are failures. So,
But the ones that we have seen, we've been a part of their lives at some point, and we're encouraging them to learn about their relationship and their relationship with not only with each other but also with the Lord, and that's been the key to their success. Is that, and I wish we could focus more on that. More on training us how to have better relationships. I've said before, we get more education on getting a driver's license than we do a marriage license.
Yeah.
And if we could walk some of these young people on how to have better relationships, I think we're going to have better outcomes. And maybe we might not need a bill like that you mentioned, Mary. I don't know. I'm not resolved on my opinion one way or the other on that bill.
well, part of why we do what we do is just because we need to, I aged out of foster care. I knew that I had no communication skills whatsoever, that everything I had seen was wrong and dysfunctional. And so therefore, having it that, whether it's taught in school or taught by a mentor or something like that, it's important.
So
Hey.
when did you come to the Lord and figure out
You
who
might need-
you were?
That might be a longer story. Do you need to take a small break
Well,
here?
I tell you what, I think we are going to have to talk about our sponsors. I
Okay.
want to make sure.
all right, yes.
We could spend hours, but the problem is this show's not 2 or 3 hour show.
Yeah.
Actually, we could spend longer than that.
Now you know why we've
gr-
been back so much.
because great.
We're still working on that.
Great discussion, but we do have 2 really good sponsors, and,
Yeah.
and we really appreciate them. Brad Pistow is a certified fiduciary financial planner. He's located right in Ozark, Missouri. He's written a couple of books, Safe Money Matters and Bulletproof. They're both #1 best-selling books on Amazon. He is Janet and my personal financial advisor for retirement planning. We've used him basically ever since we sold our pharmacies, and we have many family members and we have many friends that actually use Brad Pistow. He is not just one of the best in Missouri, but he's one of the best in the entire country. He writes articles for USA Today. He writes articles for Wall Street. He speaks all over the country. It's very hard sometimes to get a hold of him, but he always will call you back. And he will send you information at no charge, and he talks to you at no charge, and he will help you. And the phone number is 417-581-9222, 417-581-9222. And guys, look at the inflation and everything that's going on in our country and the world. It's never too early to think about retirement planning. You need to think about it quicker than most people do, okay? A second sponsor, Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. It used to be Youngblood Motor Group. That's John Whitaker now. And they sell Nissans and Kias in Springfield, Missouri, but they also sell cars and other to people in other states to come and visit Springfield, Missouri. They sell new cars on one side of South Campbell, 3525 South Campbell, and then they sell cars that are certified. They sell all kinds of used cars, but the ones I really like that I've looked at over at Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia are certified cars. That means they've gone through over 100 inspection points. When you buy that car, you will pay a little bit more for a used car, but you will have the guarantee and the peace of mind knowing that that car is going to go down the road many extra miles before it ever has anything going wrong. And so I highly recommend. My last 2 cars I've bought from them. My personal car is a 20, and so I'm thinking, okay, that's longer than I normally keep a car. And so I'm thinking, but I love my car, and there's nothing wrong with my car, but I'm just thinking, well, I might like to buy a newer car. So there's still some 24s out there, some really good deals on 24s. They're wanting to sell them because they're trying to sell their 25s, but I would highly recommend those guys. Phone number 417-882-3838. 417-882-3838, and Susan will answer the phone, and she'll take care of you. That's actually one of the best phone voices I've ever heard of, and she'll get you to the right people. So two great sponsors, but hey, Kate, let's talk about your books.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't want to talk about Kia? I mean, we just went there we bought our cars there too, right?
Okay.
We're a Kia
yeah.
family. We actually have 3 Kias in our family.
Oh man, they take
really?
such
Yeah.
good care of
And,
us.
Hey, I'm going to tell Aaron.
Yeah.
So Aaron Swanson, he was on
Yeah.
our show. He's the sales manager. So he's the number 2 guy there, underneath John Whitaker, the owner, and he was on our show talking about cars. And we'll have Brad
and the,
Stowe
and the
on our
leadership
show.
of their service department. It's
service-
always
Oh,
been good.
leadership service is great.
Yeah.
So we had a good experience with them as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they listen to our show today. I'll call Aaron up.
Yeah,
and
I
say,
no,
"Hey,
want to leave
yeah,
that out because we
I'm
just
glad you
went
said
there
that. Well,
a couple weeks ago, right?
Well, honestly,
Yeah.
As we've talked about their dealership, I've not had one person and I know a lot of people, I've not had one person that's had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Including myself with them. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Lynn, could I mention an event
Yeah.
that's coming up in a
Oh,
couple
yeah,
of
yeah,
weeks?
yeah.
And before we get into
Yeah.
Kate talking about her books that are
Okay.
out and coming out,
Yeah.
we have an event called the Faith Leaders Roundtable. And this is something that we're doing about once a month in various locations across the state of Missouri. And we're doing one on Tuesday, March 25th in Jefferson City, Missouri at the Missouri Baptist Convention building. And it's not just for Baptists, it's for all faith leaders. That's not just pastors, but leaders in the church, people who are leading ministry, whether it's marriage and family, or anybody who's a faith leader in the community. We want them to come out. We're providing lunch. And listen to this lineup of amazing speakers. We're going to have Bob Paul from Focus on the Family. He's a good friend of mine. He lives close, and he's going to be my wingman there. Timothy Faber from the Missouri Baptist Convention. He's helping me co-host the event. And we're also going to have Tim Throckmorton from Family Research Council will be there talking about, creating community impact teams and how churches can get involved in getting out the vote and that kind of thing. And then also our Honorable Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, will be there. And he's going to be providing an update on some faith and family and freedom issues that he's working on for the faith community. And then, of course, I'll also be talking about various aspects of our ministry and how faith leaders can get involved, maybe implement some of these programs. Maybe we can help train some trainers, lead some leaders into helping to strengthen and encourage marriage and family. So please come out to that.
How do they sign up or find
Yeah,
out?
can you give Dennis a link
I will.
to post with this
could we
show,
get-
and people can
Sure.
find out more about it?
Sure. You can go to vanguardmfa.org and then click on the events tab, and then you'll see that event in March. And
Now,
that'll
is there a charge for it?
no, it's if you are a faith leader, then please come, and we as long as you register and we know you're coming because seats are limited.
And there's lunch too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So there's no excuse.
Right. There's
That's
no
right.
excuse not to
Yeah,
go.
and so we're really excited. I mean, man, the great lineup of speakers. You're
Oh,
going to
yeah,
get
that's
lunch
That's
provided.
an awesome
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
And you'll have an opportunity to network beforehand. I think doors open at 11:30, and then we'll get started about noon.
That's a nice building.
Yeah.
When I was a state rep, I got to speak to a large group one night. We were encountering the problem with our Blue Cross, our 35-foot Blue Cross
Yeah.
in the park. And we had people that wanted to make us take the cross down. And so we found another little place to put it in the park that wasn't, that was a private piece of property. And so it's still up. But we had a lot of attention all around the country, all
Yeah.
50 states.
Wow.
We had people wanting to know how we were doing with that, but I got to do a report that night on that.
Yeah, and I don't-
spoke for about 15 or 20 minutes. It was a great time.
I don't know if you've been following some of the things that our Attorney General has been involved in, but
He's doing a great job.
he is doing some groundbreaking things in law and representing the faith community well, and so it's going to be fun to have him there
Yeah.
in person. Again, along with a representative from Focus on the Family and
Yeah.
Family Research Council. And so I just want to encourage any person who is leading in the faith community, please come out on Tuesday, March 25th. And if you want to register, go to vanguardmfa.org, click on the events, and then find that event and just sign up. It's pretty easy to do. But I would love to hear what my wife has to say about
Yeah,
her
because
storytelling.
Yeah.
you almost were filibustering her time, but that's okay, Kate. 'cause
Are you
we're
sure you
gonna-
don't want to run for office at some point?
We're,
No?
we're gonna take time. So,
No.
so
I didn't mean to interrupt your question.
But
Dr. Murray.
is the answer in your books?
It is. So Jerry and I wrote a book called Forsaken, and you can get it on Kindle. You can get it paperback on Amazon, or you can read it if you have Kindle Unlimited. You could read it for free, and it's called Forsaken, and that is a nonfiction book that talks about our testimony. And so I do go into some detail about what it was like to grow up, where I grew up, and how I ended up in foster care, and then how I met the Lord. And in that book, we really established why we're doing what we're doing in marriage ministry. But we wrote that book even before we were where we're at now. The Lord just really opened up the doors and accelerated us for helping for marriages. And we're really advocating not only for marriage, but we're advocating for other people who are trying to do this ministry work.
Right.
85% of churches spend $0 on marriage ministry. And then they wonder why the American church is failing, why Islam is growing faster, that maybe they have the wrong view of marriage, but at least they're staying married. At least they have families that are staying intact, and they're maybe doing it incorrectly, but they're outpacing us. And not only that, our birth rate is low. And our birth rate is so low that we can't even replace ourselves whenever we die.
We've bought into the whole world value.
Yeah.
Of the planet's more important than people.
Right.
And excuse me, that's why
Right.
God made the planet?
Exactly. For the people, for us to use and
Yeah.
for us to inhabit. And
Yeah, boy, the messaging's been wrong.
exactly. So that's kind of where, I didn't come to know Christ. I knew that there was a God. But I did not want any part of God whenever I was growing up, just because I felt that I was left in these circumstances. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, probably like my mid 20s, when I really encountered the Lord, and I really just started to pursue Him. Just like we said, get into the Word. And I love to mention this little story about when I went to church for the first time for myself, where I wasn't drugged because somebody had an Easter or baptism or something like that, where I was like, I'm going to go to church for myself. First time I ever really went, the pastor was reading from the Bible, and he was, in the sermon in the New Testament, and he mentioned Joseph, and he's like, well, I'm not going to go into that right now because everyone knows the book of Joseph, or knows about Joseph. And so he went on with his, and I was like frantically looking in the Bible for the book of Joseph so I could skim it, so I could read it really quick. And there's no book of Joseph. I didn't know where to find the story of Joseph. And so I'm looking in the index and everything and trying to keep up. But it really taught me I did not know the Word, and I needed to be in the Word. And so since then, I've read the Bible through and through multiple times, chronologically, following different ways, read the New Testament, and I just try to stay in the Word, because the more that I do that, the more I can see that this story that the Lord is telling us is true and alive for every moment of your life.
If you want to know God, the Word is God.
Exactly. And, and even someone like me who came from such, horrific circumstances, abuse and kidnapping and torture, and seeing my grandmother took her own life with me and my sister there, and it's a longer story for us to get into for sure. But through that, I used books as an escape, fiction books as an escape from the world that I was living in. But they often taught great character lessons, that think about what C.S. Lewis writes in his allegories to Jesus, and even J.R. Tolkien. And, one of my favorite books is most people's favorite book is The Hobbit, but I love The Hobbit because it's an adventure. And it's just that story of, overcoming evil. And so, it wasn't until probably about 6 years ago, five or 6 years ago, that the Lord really said, that if you can give me your time, more of your time, then I will show you what I can do with that time. And so, whereas most people try to write a fiction book, they'll write a novel, and they really struggle to get it published traditionally, I was able to, probably about a year after I really started to pursue writing, have my first novel published. And since then, I think I'm on my 8th novel. Is that what I said? Something like that, or my 8th book, if you include the nonfiction one. And so through that, I'm really glorifying God through storytelling.
Yes.
And so I write Christian fiction, romantic suspense, because I love that suspense part of it. I love to explore technology and the antagonist that's in the book. I want it to be like a real antagonist to overcome.
And this isn't your normal romance novel.
No.
This is...
Yeah, I'm actually terrible at romance. Like, he's the romantic one in our relationship. So my idea of a great date is like, we can go get some coffee, go to Best Buy, walk around looking at technology stuff. And he's like, let's go out on the boat at sunset and dance under the stars. And I'm like, all right, that sounds cool, So he's definitely the romantic one in our relationship. But that's the reason why I have romantic suspense, is that it's through relationship and difficult circumstances and being pressed that two people are able to grow and overcome and still fall in love and have that happily ever after. And so I was telling Jerry on the way over here that, in the Bible, Jesus said that you do not believe because of the hardness of your heart. He also said people divorce because of the hardness of their heart. And multiple times he said, that you're doing this thing because of the hardness of your heart. So if you are someone like me who did not want to have anything to do with God because of the hardness of my heart, because of the experiences that I had had on this earth, then why would I want to be in relationship with him? Why do I want to get in the Word? Why do I want to go to church? Why do I want to be around Christians when I see what Christians are really like behind the scenes, you know? So it's the hardness of your heart, but through storytelling, through parables, is how Jesus really spoke to someone's heart. So whenever he knew that he was talking to an educated person whose heart wasn't hardened, like his disciples, he just told them, you know, the Bible says this, or not the Bible, but, you know, God says this, or this is how we should behave. When you pray, pray like this. He gave them the actual instructions. But whenever he knew that their heart was hardened, and that moment was hardened, and he needed to teach them a different kind of lesson, he did it through storytelling in parables. And so that's why fiction and Christian fiction is really important, because you're still able to allow God to work through me and the creativity that he gives me to tell stories. And so this book here that I just finished, that's called Fireline, it's part of a series. I hope you can see that there on the camera.
Yeah,
there you go.
Fireline.
And Fireline, it's a short, really fast-paced, romantic suspense book about smoke jumpers. And I knew nothing about smoke jumpers whenever I started this. And if you don't know about smoke jumpers, you're not alone. They are the ones that fly into where there's wildfires, like in really remote places where you can't just drive the fire truck up, and they don't have water, and they land in a safe place, and then they hike to the fire. And they carry all the materials that they need, and they obviously don't have water, so they dig these fire lines around the fire to keep it from going any further. And so in this book, while I was writing it, the Lord really spoke to me about, there's a character, and they're riding along in the truck, and one of the characters is like, I don't understand why she's just not over whatever happened to her. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, obviously. And the other guy's like, hey, you know, look at this forest over here and all these trees that are burned. You know, on the outside, you see this ugly burned bark, this, you know, badness. But on the inside, there's life. But if they go and they strip that bark away right away and expose that new life of the tree, then the elements will reach it and it will actually die, because it needs that protective layer until the inside is ready to be exposed on the outside. And in this, he's talking about this woman who's really rough on the outside, and she still needs God to work on her on the inside. They can't just go and strip it away, or else it's not going to be ready, and the growth won't really be there. And so I wrote that, and I was like, well, now I need to go find out if that's true or not, because I don't even know if it's true. So it was just the Lord like working through me and using that as a metaphor to something that happens in the book.
Yeah, I call them little cactuses.
Yeah.
Prickly
right?
on the outside, but they're soft and gushy on
Soft
the inside.
and gushy on the
And,
inside.
you know, sometimes in a marital relationship, you got to hug the porcupine. Have you heard
That's what he
that?
says.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That happens sometimes. I'm not going to say who it is the porcupine, but
And
Hey,
the little,
Jerry, let me ask you a question real quick. Do you read Kate's books? Do you read all her books?
I-
She's written eight books.
He
man,
reads the
she's hard.
drafts.
She's hard to keep up with. I do the audio version
Okay.
because it's we have a very busy
Yeah.
life, and
Yeah.
so that's a way that I can get that done.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I do read a lot. And initially, I was reading through all of hers, but it takes so much time.
I'd given the manuscript early, and he's like, you know what, I might just wait till the audiobook comes
And
out.
and I'm going through. There's a lot of contracts and proposals and things like that. So I will read through those. But when it comes to start to finish, I do the audiobooks.
Yeah.
So
I have to
you've got a
admit that.
book coming out in September.
Yeah, so this book here, this one is called Girl Lost, and I'll just set it up right there. This book right here is coming out in September. It's available for pre-order right now. You can find it on my website, which is kateangelo.com. It's pretty easy website for you to get to. But Girl Lost is the first in a new series that's coming out this fall. And it is really exploring people who've gone through traumatic past, just like me. And so I had the idea of, what would happen if these children who were, 12, 13, 14, who had experienced trauma all of their life, what if they were forced to either go to this group home or go into juvie? And they end up going into this group home that just happens to be a part of an MMA gym where only law enforcement officers are allowed to work out. And so they end up working alongside them and learning all of, loyalty, and they end up learning how to fight and things like that. And then they all grow up to become law enforcement officers. And so in these books, we get to see them now as they're adults, and we get to see them working together to solve crimes, lots of plot twists, a little bit of a mystery. So I tend to write a little more on the thriller side with the romantic suspense as well. So yeah,
Oh, very
it's a
good.
great
Well,
one.
we are, guys, we're going to run out
Yeah.
of time, but next week we have
Darn.
we have organ harvesting. So I'm honestly, this is going to be one of the most interesting
Wow.
things that we've ever talked about. People don't want to miss this. Everyone around the country and around the world need to watch this show next week. We're going to have some great people on, and we really appreciate you guys. You guys
you for
are
having us.
awesome. You're difference makers. Nobody's on our show unless you're a difference maker, and
Thank you.
God is really using you guys. Have a great rest of the week. We'll be back next Wednesday.